morning, my dear Wranglers. It's me, Sheriff Andrew. Welcome to yet another episode of Galita Feed and Seed Goes Viral.
Galita Feed and Seed Goes Viral.
Galita Feed and Seed, where all the roosters practice social distancing, all the pigs wash their hooves, and all the cows dine in. Stuck at home? Have a hidden talent? Have a camera? Put your secret hidden talent on YouTube. Everyone now has a chance to become big stars.
So in review, first the cereal, then the milk. And that concludes another episode of Cooking with Tex. Till next week, bye!
Do you ever feel like a plastic bag blowing through the... Oh, hi! I didn't see you there. I was just practicing my singing. By the way, I'd love to teach you how to sing. Ready? Say it with me now. La 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 la.
That wasn't supposed to happen. Galita Feed and Seed Goes Viral.
Oh boy, remember when we were all afraid about what screen time would do to our kids' noggins? That's right, Palmentary. We all are afraid of something. What are you afraid of? That's a good point, Palmentary. When people wear masks, you don't know if they're smiling, or angry, or happy, or what's going on. What are you afraid of? Are you afraid of anything? Bees, spiders, tall slides, the dark? When I was a little kid, I was really afraid of the ocean. I didn't like the way the waves seemed to come after me all the time. It was very scary. And you know what? Being afraid or being scared is actually not a bad thing. God has made us extra special. Our body tells us when there's something dangerous around. Our heart starts to beat, our palms can get a little sweaty, our tummy can get a little sick. That's all perfectly normal, because if there's something dangerous around, you need to do something about it. Maybe you need to talk to an adult you trust. Maybe you need to get down from that tall tree you're climbing. Maybe you need to talk to God, because God is with you even when you're afraid. Now, there are some times when we're afraid of things that maybe we don't need to be afraid of. But don't worry, that's all part of growing up and learning what is dangerous and what isn't. Actually, here's a story of when Lupe was afraid of something that she didn't know what to do with. Check it out.
Lupe!
Lupe, I'm gonna turn off the lights now. Good night.
thinking I don't know how to pray, huh? Well, you just go like this. Dear Jesus, please help me. Yep, that makes me feel way better.
Wait a second. Aren't the kids supposed to be in quarantine? Oh, we filmed this before this whole thing started.
All right, I'm gonna go back to sleep. Night-night.
I have to be honest, kids. I snore, and sometimes I snore so loud, I scare myself. You can't hear me all the way in the barn, Pomentary. Point is, there are times when we are going to be afraid. Today, as we continue learning about the life of Paul, we're going to keep hearing about how Paul wanted everyone to know about Jesus. But some people didn't want to hear about Jesus. And so there were many times during Paul's journeys when he was in great danger and when he was probably pretty scared. But just like Lupe, Paul learned that he could trust God even when he was afraid. Paul learned that he could pray, that he could sing, that he could lean on God, because God is bigger than anything we could possibly be afraid of. Let's hear today's story. Today's story is about Paul. Paul was one of the first followers of Jesus. He was a missionary. That means he traveled to distant places and told other people about Jesus. He wrote many of the books in the Bible. Paul loved Jesus. But Paul wasn't always that way. When Paul was younger, he studied the writings of Moses and the prophets in the Bible. He was a good student and tried to do the right thing. But Paul believed that people who followed Jesus were wrong. He thought they were working against God, so Paul tried to stop them from telling others about Jesus. Paul even had the followers of Jesus in Jerusalem arrested and put in jail for believing in Jesus. One time, Paul traveled to the far-off city of Damascus to arrest the followers of Jesus. But when he was near the city, suddenly, a bright light shone out of the sky. Paul and the men with him were so surprised, and the light was so bright that they fell to the ground. Jesus talked to Paul that day, and Paul realized he was wrong. Now he knew that Jesus was God's Son. From that moment on, Paul was a changed man. He was a follower of Jesus. After this, Paul went home to live in the city of Tarsus and continued to learn about Jesus. One of his friends, a man named Barnabas, was leading a church in the nearby town of Antioch. He asked Paul to help him. So Paul did, and for several years Paul lived in Antioch and taught people about Jesus. While Paul was in Antioch, God called him to be a missionary. That means that God wanted Paul to travel to other towns and cities telling other people about Jesus. So Paul immediately left and traveled on several missionary trips. On one trip, Paul and his friend Silas went to a city called Philippi. While they were there, they told people about Jesus. Many people believed and were baptized. One day, Paul helped a slave girl. She would tell people that what she thought was going to happen to them. That's called fortune telling. One day, Paul helped a slave girl. Her job was to tell people what she thought was going to happen to them. That's called fortune telling. People would give the owners of the slave girl money to hear her tell their fortunes. She was sick, and so Paul healed her. After Paul healed her, the slave girl wouldn't tell people's fortunes anymore. The men who owned the slave girl were very mad at Paul and Silas, because now they couldn't earn any more money from the slave girl. The slave owners dragged Paul and Silas before a judge and accused them of doing bad things. The judge believed the slave owners. he had Paul and Silas punished. After that, he sent them to prison. The prison jailer put Paul and Silas in a cell and put chains on their feet to keep them from escaping. Do you think Paul and Silas were happy about this? I am sure they were not. They were in a cold jail cell, their legs were chained together, and their backs hurt so much from the punishment they had taken that they couldn't sleep. What would you have done? I know what Paul and Silas did. Paul and Silas prayed and sang hymns to God. How could they do that? Paul and Silas knew that God was with them and God would take care of them no matter where they were. And while things looked bad for them now, God was in control, and he was going to make this work out for the best. You see, Paul and Silas trusted God. That's how they could sing. So while Paul and Silas were singing hymns, what were all the other prisoners doing? They were listening to Paul and Silas sing praises to God. This might have been the first time they'd heard about Jesus. About midnight, there was a great earthquake. The prison was shaken from top to bottom. All the prison doors burst open. The chains that held the prisoners' legs opened up too. The earthquake woke up the keeper of the prison, who ran to the jail. He was very upset when he saw all of the damage, and he thought all the prisoners had escaped. But Paul told the jailer it was okay. All the prisoners were still here. That moment, the jailer realized that Paul and Silas must be servants of the true God. So he asked them, "What must I do to be saved?" He wanted to become a follower of Jesus too. He took Paul and Silas to his house and washed their wounds and gave them some food and drink. Paul told the jailer and his whole family about Jesus. Everyone believed what Paul said, and they were all baptized that very hour. The next day, Paul and Silas were allowed to go free because they had done nothing wrong. They said goodbye to all the friends they made in Philippi and continued on their trip. Paul really had some incredible adventures. Whoa, Palmentary, how did you sneak up on me like that? I didn't even hear you. Oh, you learned it online at a sneaky ninja video tutorial? That's pretty impressive. Hey Wranglers, don't forget, it's okay to be afraid. But remember to talk to somebody you trust about your fears. That can be your mom, your dad, a teacher that you trust. Talk to somebody about it. And don't forget that God is bigger than anything you're afraid of, and God is with you when you're afraid. All right? Hey, love you guys, miss you guys, praying for you all the time. And don't forget, love your parents, wash your hands, call your grandma.